Why is everything in the Middle East so complicated? Everyone asks this question, but we usually look for the answer in the wrong place. In the latest news, the latest war, the latest leader. Yet the answer goes much further back. When the First World War ended, it wasn't only the borders of the Middle East that changed. What changed was far deeper: who people were, what they would obey, who they would trust. All of it was rewritten, and this rewriting was never silent. The newly established states turned to force to dismantle the old order. A new generation of elites educated in the West looked down on their own societies. They did not hesitate to use coercion to transform them. Those caught between their own culture and the modern world gradually became strangers to both their society and themselves. This estrangement did not remain an idea. The state used violence to establish order. In Palestine, people adopted violence as the language of their struggle for freedom. When the Cold War ended, conflicts took on the shape of sect, ethnicity, identity. The story of the modern Middle East is not only the story of borders drawn, but of the rage that accumulated within them. Now let's go back to the beginning. The land we call the Middle East today didn't even carry that name back then. Damascus, Cairo, Baghdad, Jerusalem. These were the cities of an empire. Under the Ottoman roof, Muslims, Christians, Jews, Arabs, Kurds, Armenians lived on the same lands. Each community preserved its own language, religion, courts, and schools. This was called the millet system. There was an order that functioned according to its own dynamics. The real question is this: why did that order collapse? In the 19th century, two things came to the Middle East from Europe. One was ideas, the other was power. The ideas came first. Modern schools opened in Beirut, in Cairo, in Istanbul. The printing press spread. Arabic newspapers emerged. French philosophers were translated into Arabic. A young generation was memorizing the Quran while reading Voltaire. And this generation asked for the first time, who are we? Are we Ottoman subjects? Arabs? Muslims? This question seems innocent, but it was dangerous enough to displace an order that had functioned for centuries. Power came in a more concrete form. The British entered Egypt. The French had already taken Algeria. The Ottoman Empire weakened a little more with every passing decade. The region was no longer a place that governed itself. It was a place to be governed. 1914 arrived, the war that changed everything. The First World War was not just a war for the Middle East, it was the end of one world and the forced beginning of another. The Ottoman Empire collapsed. But what came in its place? In 1916, the British and the French signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Two diplomats at a table in Paris divided the Middle East with a ruler and a pen. The borders they drew paid no attention to ethnic realities, to history, or to the people living on those lands. At the same time, the British promised the Arabs independence. They promised the Jews a homeland in Palestine, and they secretly divided the territory with the French. The same land, at the same moment, was given to three different parties, and all three learned this through written documents. After the war, new names were written onto the map: Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon. These names were new, but what was inside them was even newer. The institutions, the borders, and sometimes even the leaders of these states were brought in or imposed from outside. States were established on paper, but nations were never truly built. In Iraq, Shia, Sunni, and Kurdish communities were placed under the same flag. In Syria, dozens of different communities were bound to a single capital. In Palestine, the claims of two peoples over one land were left to collide. This contradiction was never resolved. This artificial unity cracked at every moment of crisis, and it continues to crack. From the 1950s onward, soldiers stepped onto the stage. Nasser in Egypt, Qasim in Iraq, then the Ba'ath. Repeated coups in Syria, Gaddafi in Libya. They all shared the same message. The puppets of the West are gone. The people have taken power, and the people truly believed it. Because what they said was true, the previous rulers had no legitimacy. But once these leaders came to power, they followed the same path. They silenced the opposition. They turned institutions into networks of personal loyalty. They bought a quiet consent by distributing oil revenues to the people. The Six-Day War of 1967 changed everything. The devastating defeat against Israel destroyed the prestige of Arab nationalism. People no longer believed in these leaders, but they didn't know what else to believe in either. To fill this void, political Islam began to rise. The Cold War made the picture even more complicated. The United States and the Soviet Union tried to pull every country to their side. Weapons flowed. Coups were supported. Instead of solving its own problems, the region became a chessboard for great powers. The Cold War ended, but no new stability came for the Middle East. Quite the opposite. With the Gulf War of 1991, the United States established a permanent military presence in the region. From that point on, the internal affairs of the Middle East and foreign intervention became inseparable. The invasion of Iraq in 2003 was the sharpest breaking point of this process. Saddam was toppled, but along with him, the institutions, the army, the bureaucracy, the institutional memory built over decades, all of it was demolished in a single night. What remained was not just a power vacuum, but a societal collapse. In 2011, the Arab Spring arrived. Peoples poured into the streets. Dictators were shaken. But here, something critical must be understood. People knew very well what they were against, what they wanted, what kind of order they would build. They did not yet know. That difference determined everything. Into the void left by every collapsing state came not a legitimate alternative, but a deeper chaos. Foreign interventions added new layers of conflict instead of producing solutions. The Middle East today lives under the weight of those layers. 5 periods, 5 breaking points. Each one grew from within the previous. Each one prepared the ground for the next. The Ottoman millet system dissolved. Artificial borders took its place. Artificial borders created a crisis of legitimacy. Coups took their place. The coups collapsed. Foreign interventions took their place. Foreign interventions left a void. We have all seen what filled that void. But pay attention. In this process, not a single period truly came to a close. The borders drawn by Sykes-Picot are still there. The tensions created by the Mandate era remain unresolved. The institutional decay of the coup era is still working from within. These are not the past. These are the foundations of today. And that is precisely why we cannot move on without asking, the people living beneath all these layers, do they still know who they are?